$1 deal with the Lakers once he clears waivers. Our Adrian Wojnarowski is reporting Rondo agreed to a buyout with the Grizzlies over the weekend. He helped LA to an NBA title while in the 2020 bubble, set to back up Russ.
Davis 4-3 in the win. Oh, it's gone. 2020 NBA championship belongs to the Los Angeles Lakers.
So Westbrook are off the floor, somebody who could take on some of that playmaking burden as well. And of course, off the floor, a brilliant tactician, somebody who can help quite a bit in the film room to make sure that everybody is on the same page. So this is a win for the Lakers on and off the floor, in my opinion. A quick interesting note, Rondo gave back $2.6 million to the Memphis Grizzlies. That was the cost of the buyout, which is the exact same amount that he's signing with for the Lakers, which means that Rondo loses $0 in this situation. And yet he moves from the Memphis Grizzlies to the Los Angeles Lakers. The Grizzlies saved $2.6 million by agreeing to this buyout. The Lakers are going to pay him that. Rondo himself loses nothing and gets to become a Los Angeles Laker once again. And it's only been, about 10 months or so since the Lakers hoisted an NBA championship with Rondo on the roster. And in between then and now, he's been an Atlanta Hawk, a Clipper, and now he's back where he belongs with the purple and gold. Of course, that leaves the Lakers with 2 open roster spots. We are hearing that they're only going to use one of them, and they're going to save the other one for the midseason buyout.
The Los Angeles Clippers were one of the clear winners at the trade deadline in the Western Conference, landing the point guard they needed and the point guard Kawhi Leonard has long demanded in Rajon Rondo. I know. Rondo's numbers they've been horrible this year, by the way. Horrible on the Atlanta Hawks. His numbers look terrible on paper. But you don't get Rajon Rondo for paper. You get him for rings. That's what you get him for. Because he always shows up come playoff time. Kawhi and the rest of the Clippers, they better show up in the playoffs now. Make no mistake about it. There simply cannot be a repeat of last year when they flamed out early against Denver, when they failed to give us the matchup with the Lakers, the matchup that we were promised, by the way. We were promised that. Because now Kawhi and the Clippers have the very same point guard LeBron had when they won the title last season. But it's not just the Lakers with a healthy LeBron James and Anthony Davis who will be waiting for the Clippers this year. The Denver Nuggets stand in the way too. Denver also got a lot better at the deadline, adding Aaron Gordon to a team that already has the Joker, that already has Jamal Murray, that already is 4th in the NBA in scoring. The Denver Nuggets are now a very, very real threat to come out of the Western Conference. Better than a threat than they.
What does this move mean for the Clippers?
Well, to me, it means that they definitely have improved significantly. It's not just because you've got a point guard, a legitimate, bona fide, quintessential point guard, not just somebody who's stout on the defensive end of the floor or who's supposed to be stout on the offensive end of the floor. You have a cerebral guy at the point guard spot to run your offense, freeing up the Paul Georges and Kawhi Leonards of those responsibilities, putting them in a position where they get to just do their thing as opposed to having to facilitate opportunities for themselves. And that's a big, big deal. Then you take into account it's playoff Rondo that we're talking about here, because that's what you got him for. We know what he can do. He's a reigning, defending NBA champion. He was on that Lakers squad last year. He knows how to run a team. He's a 2-time champion. Experience and all of that stuff that comes with it, he's got that. Then you have to take into consideration the fact that because he's with the Clippers, how much did that potentially do to the Lakers, which is something we'll get into a little bit later, because you're talking about a guy that's incredibly familiar with the things that the Lakers like to do in order to be successful. So he's able to bring his already supreme intellect to the equation. But then when you combine that with his knowledge of what they want to do and how they want to do it, because he's been their teammates, you never know what kind of profound impact that could have. But ultimately, it all equals to this. There is no excuses, and it puts Kawhi Leonard in the line of fire. The pressure has mounted significantly. He wanted a point guard desperately. He's got a point guard. The Clippers have given him everything that he needs. It's on him. He wasn't the man in San Antonio, okay? Even though he was the man in Toronto to some degree, we all know what role Kyle Lowry and them played from a leadership perspective and the continuity and cohesion that they had available to them, because they had been accustomed to playing with one another for years. Now it comes down to Kawhi Leonard, the face of this franchise, the man that they mortgaged the farm for. This is what it's all about, and it's on him, And I love it because this is when we're going to find out what this brother's made of. I'm not talking about points, Max. I'm not talking about his personal level of production. I'm talking about his ability as a leader to galvanize the pieces around him to make sure you get max potential or max production out of the parts that surround you. That's what leaders do. We're going to see whether or not Kawhi Leonard has that in him.
Well, we never claimed Kawhi Leonard was a leader, just playing basketball at his position. There are very few who've ever done it better than him. Two-way player. So the issue has not been Kawhi. The issue's been Paul George, who doesn't show up in the playoffs, period. Paul George goes from all-star plus regular season to starter plus in the playoffs. He goes down like a full notch. Kawhi doesn't. Kawhi's a two-time finals MVP. Kawhi was great last playoffs until Game 7. I agree with that. That was a choke job. But so Paul George is the guy hitting the side of the backboard. Now, you pointed that out. Now, Rondo makes them better. I wouldn't say no excuses better. I would say better because they had to give up Lou Williams to get him. And it's too bad for the Clippers because the Clippers wanted to add Rondo in the offseason, but they couldn't make it work because Rondo wanted to go get paid. Of course, you want to go get your money. He got it. But now, in order to bring him in, they had to exchange a piece. In the regular season, Lou Williams better than Rondo. And it's not like Lou Williams can't play under pressure. It's just that what this team needed, they're playing Kawhi sort of as a point forward. That's not really him. He's gotten much better at it, even this year than last year than the year before. He's gotten much better at it. But that's not him naturally. They needed a floor general who can organize their offense and a guy who can help Paul George when it matters most in the playoffs. They got that in Rondo, but they gave up one of the best six men ever. I mean, who perennially is in running for sixth man of the year in the history of the game as much as Lou Williams? They had to give that up. They got marginally better. Now, marginally better might be enough because they were knocking at the door as is. But let's not make it like, oh, now they got Rondo. They didn't have to give anything up. No excuses. Kawhi, he ain't there because Kawhi needs an excuse. He's there to help out the offense, and if anyone needs help on that team under pressure, it ain't Kawhi, it's Paul George.
$8.3 million traded player exception that they will have a year to lose. Max Kellerman. Did the Clippers improve?
They did. And this was a good trade for the Clippers. You know how I say you don't want to trade, break a dollar into 4 quarters in the NBA, but you want to turn 4 quarters into a dollar? This is more like 2 quarters into a 50-cent piece. Eric Bledsoe can attack the basket. You give up Patrick Beverly, he's a defender. Rondo, high basketball IQ, but Rondo's getting long in the tooth. Like, he really has been in decline, and we saw it even like playoff Rondo didn't. When playoff Rondo didn't show up, that tells you he's just getting older. And Patrick Beverly was never a dynamic offensive player, but he could play some defense and, give you that fighting spirit. Well, Bledsoe does the same thing. He can do defensively and even maybe be more disruptive defensively sometimes based on his athletic ability. Than a guy, than what they've lost. And meantime, he's a player who can get to the basket and score. And they have shooting on the team, so Bledsoe's not a great shooter, but it's not as much of an issue. In fact, the spacing may even help him attacking the basket. This is the Clippers just got better because they got the best player in the deal.
Max, I disagree with you. It's not that I'm saying that Patrick Beverly is better than Eric Bledsoe, because I'm not. And I like Eric Bledsoe. He's not a scrub. He can play really strong as well, and he can put some points up, and I get that point. So technically speaking, you're right about him being a better player. But I got to tell you, I'd rather have Patrick Beverly come postseason. And last time I checked, the Clippers are trying to win a championship. This is what it is. The Los Angeles Clippers, a legitimate argument could be made, should be standing here today as NBA champions. If Kawhi Leonard had gone down near the end of the Utah series, a lot of people believe the Clippers would have beaten the Phoenix Suns. And I'm not ruling that out. Not with Kawhi and Paul George playing the way that he was playing. With Kawhi averaging 30 on 57% shooting from the field and 39% from three-point range before he went down. But then when you take into account, the energizer bunny that Patrick Beverly was, his ability to defend, and he actually was hitting some key, not in abundance, but he was hitting some key pivotal shots. End of the Utah series, obviously a couple of games against Phoenix. I just look at it from the standpoint that being the professional Hall of Fame pest that he is, somebody that doesn't just goes out there and plays, but really, really tries to get into your head. I don't see that in Eric Bledsoe. I see a guy that just goes out there and plays hard. He doesn't cheat you. He's got game. He can play, but he's not somebody that's an Energizer bunny that provides that kind of spark. And I think that come postseason time, particularly when you look at the Western Conference, I think those kind of intangibles are things that you need to get you over the hump. And I don't see that being Eric Bledsoe, which is why he was gone from Milwaukee and why they had no problems trading him for Drew Holiday. And ultimately, he was saddled in New Orleans before, and ultimately Memphis before he ended up being back in Los Angeles with the Clippers. I think that Beverly is going to be a loss.